Hello, Facebook Live and YouTube streaming. Welcome to a slightly delayed Wine Cellars Wine Wednesday. We're working through some technical difficulties, but I think we've got it straightened out, and we've got a good one for you again tonight. So continuing our virtual tasting series, we're going to go out to California, and we're going to visit with some pioneers in Santa Barbara County. We've been working with the family, the LaFon family, for years and years. Another great family with multi-generations working at the winery. I think we're in generation 3 that's doing some work there. Hi, Charlie. Welcome, everybody that's coming on board. We've got a few viewers here. We'll let you get up to speed before I introduce you. We're actually pretty lucky. We've got a few LaFons and Bruce McGuire. So Pierre LaFond, I don't want to steal too much thunder, but he was a real pioneer in the region, set up the first post-prohibition winery in the region, with Bruce coming on board in the early 1980s, and Bruce being a pioneer for Syrah, especially Pinot Noir, especially in the Santa Rita Hills area. So we're lucky to have both of them with us today. So we're going to taste 3 wines from Santa Barbara Winery. We're going to taste their Santa Barbara County Chardonnay, Santa Barbara County Pinot Noir, and the Santa Rita Hills Appellated Pinot Noir. So without further ado, I want to welcome to Wine Cellars Wine Wednesday, Pierre LaFond and Bruce McGuire. How you doing, guys?
Great. We're doing well. Thank you. I don't see
Great.
Bruce
Well, how long have you guys got to mute that one. Which is working better for you guys?
Michelle just switched to her.
Now we got it. That one.
That's better. Yeah. Let's leave the laptop. All right.
Perfect.
I think that's better for everybody. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, Pierre, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you decided to start the first post-prohibition winery in 1962 in Santa Barbara County.
Well, that's been such a long time, I think I've forgotten why. You'll have to excuse me for that one.
Well, real pioneer in the region and involved in a number of other businesses. Before then, you had some retail. I believe you were a cheesemonger.
Well, we had a retail store. I came here as an architect. I graduated in architecture from McGill in Montreal. And I got interested in the business, so that's slowly evolved. And first we had a liquor store, and then we had a winery, and then we had Bruce. That's what was important, to have a really good winemaker.
All right, and Bruce, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved at Santa Barbara, and how you went from insects to microbes?
Well, in '79, I drove to California to basically work in the wine industry for a year before going to UC Davis. And I didn't make it to UC Davis. I worked for 2 wineries in Northern California, and then got the opportunity to move to Santa Barbara. 2 blocks from the beach in downtown Santa Barbara. The big draw was Sanford and Benedict had started making Pinot Noir a few years earlier, and that vineyard was like a mile and a half away from Pierre's vineyard. So that was definitely a big draw for moving into the area, was the Pinot Noir. The first thing I got planted in '82 was Pinot Noir. So it was something that was in short supply in the county at that point. Now there's almost too much in the county. It turned out that Pierre's vineyards were in what became the Santa Rita Hills. But at that time, there were so few vineyards in the area that we had no appellation yet.
All right. Let's take a look at some of these photos and see kind of how historical. I mean, you guys being pioneers and some of the first in the region and kind of leading the way for everybody. There's obviously a lot of history there. So let's throw in a little bit of history into this and take a look at some of these good images. And maybe it'll bring up some good conversation. Hang on one second. All right. Can we see the old Santa Barbara Winery sign? Does that look good to you guys there?
Yes.
Is this still hanging, Bruce?
Yeah, that's still on the wall. That's been there for, I don't know, 45, 50 years.
In Santa Barbara.
In downtown Santa Barbara.
Yeah, that's down in the funk zone, huh?
Down in the funk zone. We were here before it became the funk zone. And right now it's no longer funky.
Yeah, it's pretty upscale, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
So here's some of that history, and obviously we don't want to go back to 1782. And we talked about maybe Prohibition in 1933. Pierre opened Santa Barbara Winery in 1962, planting of vineyards in the Santa Rita Hills, what became the Santa Rita Hills appellation. We talked about Bruce coming on board in 81. Some AVAs getting recognized. I think the most important for us today is the Santa Rita Hills in 2001. And then maybe after that being sideways, kind of lighting American Pinot Noir and maybe even especially Pinot Noir from that specific region on fire.
I'll try to take credit for getting the first meeting going on the Santa Rita Hills. There was a point where there was enough producers in the Santa Rita Hills, but we were getting lumped into the other part of the valley. And I remember seeing a magazine where somebody from Santa Maria claimed that that's where you grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but in the warmer San Ynez Valley, you grow Cabernet and Syrah. I called up Brian Babcock and Richard Sanford, and that kind of was the genesis of getting the appellation in the works.
All right. That's so again, another pioneer for the region. And I think what we want to do, we're going to show some photos first, and we'll talk about some other history before we show kind of like, I want to dig a little deeper into why that is, why it's cooler in that Santa Rita Hills in the western part of the San Ynez Valley. And we'll go back maybe and kind of readdress some of those topics. But let's get some then and now pictures. Do you know when that might have been taken of the two of you guys?
One, Bruce.
Late 80s.
Late 80s. And
30 years ago.
And then another good oldie of Bruce here.
I think that's the same genre or same time frame.
Same time frame. And then look at the modern equipment you guys are working with back then.
That's actually David LaFond with a green hat holding the hose.
Oh, that's
Right on. So the family affair for sure. And we'll actually see some stuff from David. So we've got some other LaFonds involved in the business. You mentioned David, which is Pierre's son. Also Michelle, who's director of marketing there. And then Michelle's daughter, Madeline's now graduated college, working with you guys a little bit too, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Excellent. Let's see if we got some more modern photos. There's Bruce in a barrel room.
Haven't aged a bit, right?
That's an old one.
Take a look at this one.
Yeah, that's me with an old one. When was that taken?
That was probably in the 60s.
Yeah.
It's a great photo. It should be, if it's not framed in the house somewhere, it definitely should be.
Well, I think we did have it framed somewhere.
After I started working here, Pierre didn't do lab work anymore.
No. For good reason.
While we're taking a look, here's David and Pierre.
No, that's the.
Yes.
Yeah, that is David.
And how did we're going to talk about David here in a minute because he's really running kind of a little bit more on the agronomy side of things, where maybe Bruce is a little bit more on the enology side of things. And I know the two overlap greatly, but how did David get involved in the agronomy part of the stuff?
Out of necessity, he built the Lafon facility and basically stayed on to manage the facility, and it also includes the farming and all the farm equipment. Since his background was contracting, he tends to be the person that fixes things when the vineyard guys break it.
Yeah, I think I've got a photo that we'll get to here shortly when we talk about David a little bit more. But before we get there, I'm going to take down our presentation here real quick and pull it out of the stream. And maybe we can take some Chardonnay, and I'll read through some of these comments from our friends. And let's talk about maybe why that Chardonnay is important for you guys, the history of Chardonnay for Santa Barbara Winery, because it's really what I would call your flagship wine. And let's see how that developed.
Well, I think I've been making the wine in a very similar fashion for probably the last 20 years, maybe longer, where it's a combination of barrel fermented malolactic wine and stainless steel tank fermented non-malolactic wine. It's sourced from all over Santa Barbara County, the Santa Rita Hills, and also a lot of fruit from Los Alamos, which is in the middle of Santa Barbara County.
So it's a nice combination. I tell people when I talk about the wine, for me, it's very prototypical of good quality, kind of fuller bodied California Chardonnay, and has the hallmarks of Santa Barbara County for me, in the fact that it has all this bright acidity along with that rich, ripe fruit that we're looking for, and that combination of what tends to be about one-third barrel ferment full mallow and 2/3 stainless steel. You bring the two together and you get the best of both worlds.
I think they fit really well together.
Yeah, I was looking at the tech notes on this one, and it said I think 2018 had 42% barrel ferment and mallow. So a little bit more barrel regimen on this guy, maybe?
It kind of depends on how much tank space I have and how much wine needs to go to barrel. So it's kind of somewhat spontaneous every year. You never can make exactly the gallons that you want to make because every harvest is different.
Yeah, totally understandable. Let's take a look and see. We got Mr. Charlie Master, a friend of Wine Cellars for sure. He's wishing everybody a happy Wine Wednesday, y'all. We got Mr. Keith Livingston. He says, wow, the legends. He's been, he's seen, he's visited, he knows the history. So he says hello from H-Town. Got a few other people joining us along the way. Paula Henry says hi. Ms. Valerie Lynch on our East Coast, pioneers with interesting backgrounds making the best wines. Great seeing you.
Well, it's great seeing all of you.
Virtually, that is, right?
Virtually.
And we've got Valerie loving the 60s photos. We've got a few more of those up, so don't tune out yet. We're going to taste some Pinot Noir, take a look at some more of these photos. Lucy Herrera, who works for MexCorp or MPWS in Austin, is a big fan of the show. She says the Chardonnay is amazing.
Thank you.
And Keith's a Chardonnay guy too, so he likes that Chardonnay. So, and we've got Christina joining us from San Diego. So hi, Christina. And one more from California before we move on. Take a look at some pictures. Miss Diana Farber.
Well, come and visit.
Soon. You guys are, the tasting room's open with, you've got outdoor and you've got a little bit of indoor now.
Yeah, it's in progress, obviously. We have seated tasting outside. We've expanded our outside area, so on the weekends we can get more basically tables to spread around. I know it's been fairly busy. It's not quite like it has been, but it's definitely coming back.
Yeah, and you have a tasting room out in Buellton on the Santa Rita Hills as well. Is that open or that's not open?
Definitely open.
Definitely open. So go visit them, whether you're in Santa Barbara, downtown in the Funk Zone, or out in Buellton, out in wine country, where it's picturesque. We'll actually take people there shortly and show them some images. But before we get there, we're going to pop our presentation back in here. And I keep getting this weird security alert. Hang on, bear with me, guys. Here we go. So the next picture, talking about the outdoor tasting room. This obviously is not from the past week, but how long ago would you say that is?
I think I recognize a former tasting room manager, and that was in the early 80s.
Early 80s.
I think that's Julianne.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of how I date things, by tasting room managers. And
Well, he probably worked through a few of them. So
in 40 years, you tend to have some turnover.
But not that many.
Yeah,
really.
usually our managers are here for extended periods of time.
and
I think Suzanne, who's our current tasting room manager, is maybe pushing about 15 years.
well, it's a great family to work with. That's a great family to work for, and obviously the wines are great. You guys are landmarks down there, so why go anywhere? Here's a more recent photo of the tasting room staff.
Yeah, that was when we did a small run of sparkling Pinot Noir wine, and that was as we were getting ready to release it. We only made 200 cases, so I don't think you're going to see it, Lee.
Yeah, you guys actually have a lot of really interesting, fun cellar door only wines that I highly encourage. If you're there, definitely taste and check out. Your website also, you can purchase directly from you guys. So your website offers a lot more than what wine cellars work with. So lots of fun, small lot stuff that you work with there.
I try to keep entertained.
Yeah, and funky varietals too. What's the funkiest varietal you think you've worked with, or have worked with, or currently working with?
I'd have to say Lagrein is the most obscure. There's very little in the state of California, and people ask, "What is that? Is that a blend?" Or so, no, that's a grape from northern Italy.
Yeah, it's a great northeastern Italy, kind of a medium-bodied red. At least up there it is. So I've had it before. Definitely an interesting, off-the-beaten-track varietal for sure.
Yeah, here you can't call it medium-bodied.
No.
No.
So it gets too ripe.
It gets ripe.
Right. Yeah.
And it tends to be a deeply saturated, rich red wine.
Yeah. Well, you plant the same grape in different places, you get different results, and kind of the beauty, the art, as well as a little bit of science of winemaking, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
I still have people. I've been with wine cellars for 19 years, and for the entire time that I've worked for wine cellars, we've worked with Santa Barbara Winery. So that I'm not sure how many years that puts total together with wine cellars before my time. And I still get people asking me about the ZCS. I know I'm going to get in trouble for mentioning it because I'll get a flurry of inquiries about how do I get that wine. But that wine also held Zinfandel Carignan Sangiovese blend. Still holds a place in people's hearts.
That was a really fun wine, and it basically came about from having agreed to take some Carignan from a vineyard in Ballard Canyon. I had a small amount of Sangiovese, and we had surplus Zinfandel from the program that we were purchased it for, and I put the blend together.
Yeah,
we pretty much had to stop it because the price of the grapes, Zinfandel got popular again, and the price just put us out of our kind of price bracket that we've been selling it at.
Yeah, it was an affordable under $20 bottle of wine that we used to sell out there at retail.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right. I'm around dinner time here, and we didn't really talk about food pairings with the Chardonnay, but probably a pretty versatile wine. What's some of your favorite pairings? Maybe Pierre's got a favorite pairing with the Chardonnay.
No, I don't actually. I leave that to Bruce.
Come on, Pierre, some kind of vegetarian.
I like Chardonnay with almost anything. So, but I'm sure it's not paired properly. I think Bruce is the one that would be able to talk about the pairing.
Everything except Thai food.
Everything except for Thai food. Yeah, I think it's pretty versatile. It's medium to full-bodied Chardonnay, and got good acidity, so has enough flavor to stand up to a lot of stuff, but won't overpower more delicate things. So that's what makes a versatile wine for sure, huh?
Definitely, it definitely being medium weight. It's not as rich or as intense as our reserve Chardonnay, and that would be more appropriate for lobster or scallops or something quite a bit richer. And that pairing is really good with the richer styles of Chardonnay that we do. Yeah,
the reserve Chardonnay we do sell a little bit of out there. So, and also a perennial mid-90s scorer for Wine Spectator and Wine Enthusiast, for, of course, whatever that matters. But and still pretty affordable. You're looking at $25 to $30, I think, on the reserve Chard. So it's out there. And if you like the richer styles, that's 100% barrel fermented, I believe.
Yes, 100% barrel, 100% malolactic.
Yeah, so that richer style for sure.
It's Santa Rita Hills fruit, so it's really got good fruit intensity.
Yeah, and still maintains that acidity too, which you need to stand up to all that secondary manipulation you're doing in the cellar master.
Well, the important thing is that it's got such intense fruit that you can embellish it.
Yeah,
a little bit more aggressively.
Let's move on and taste our Santa Barbara County Pinot Noir while we take a look at some other pictures. And maybe you can tell us when this came about, the concept behind it, and the composition and what you do to it and what you're looking for.
Well, the county Pinot came about by basically declassifying maybe our younger vines, our less concentrated lots, and kind of removing them out of the other Pinot Noirs that we do, so that it's very fruit forward, very drinkable, most importantly, but it has the great Santa Rita Hills fruit.
Yeah, loaded with red fruit, lots of raspberry for me. Maybe a little bit more darker bramble, some cherry, a touch of spice to it, and a pretty floral component, this violet, very floral component for me.
I work on that.
He does.
Well, it's extremely pretty, so nicely done. I want to take a look at some more photos. So this has got a couple generations in there. There's David on the far right with his trademark cowpoke outfit on there with the hat and the checkered and the jeans. And I believe that's your other daughter next to him.
No, that's David's wife.
That's David's wife. I'm sorry.
Michelle's in the center.
Michelle's in the center. Madeline's there, and Michelle's husband Brian.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, you got most of it there. And then I think we're gonna get to talking about where you are, the uniqueness of it, and talk about the Santa Rita Hills. But you guys are doing some sustainable viticulture. Let's talk about some sustainability and what you're doing out there ecologically and for the environment and for the grapes and the quality of the wine in the end.
Well, it's not just for grapes; it's also for everyone that's working in the vineyard.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
that that is not a that's considered too, because we have our vineyard manager Enrique has been with us for over 20 years. Um, his kids are now working in the vineyard, so everyone cares about what's going on in the vineyard.
Yeah, you think about it, you're not just spraying the vines, but you're exposing yourself to whatever kind of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and chemicals you're putting out there. So the less you put on the vines, the less you're exposing yourself to, for sure.
Right, because the vineyard crews are going to go through the vineyard multiple times during the growing season. So they're doing shoot thinning, leaf pulling, fruit dropping. So the vines are getting handled quite a bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to watch a little vine tucking here in a little bit. So there's more viticultural activity where you'd be exposed to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the vines get handled.
And great picture. It's probably David on horseback in the vineyard.
Yeah, he claims that he can see the vineyard better that way by being above it. So it's like, okay, David, you need to go ride your horse. I must say that David definitely, there was a point where he went cowboy after the winery opening up. Before he was a construction guy. Now he's kind of gone the farm boy, cowboy.
Well, we'll have an opportunity to see him here shortly with a few more images of the vineyards. And this looks like maybe this is the riverbed in between the mountain ranges. Maybe some Pinot Noir here.
Actually, out in the distance, there's a tree line, and that's the San Ynez River. On the slope going down the hill is Syrah, and then the entire lower field is Pinot Noir. And at this point here, we're looking north. The San Ynez River runs east-west to the west to the Pacific Ocean, and the ocean is only 16 miles away. Every day, usually about 12:30, the wind starts to come up the valley from the ocean, and that cools the temperature sometimes 15 degrees. So the warmest part of the day is in the morning into about 12:30, and then you can feel the air flow pick up and the temperature drop. It's very consistent, and pretty much as you head east up the valley, the temperature goes up about 1 degree per mile. So, 5 miles away, there's no Pinot Noir being planted.
Yeah, that degree of temperature, people may not think is much, but you aggregate that over the course of a growing season, and you're talking about a dramatic difference in terms of heat and overall of ripening. Here's one of those old tractors. Maybe David fixed up in the past at some point.
It still works.
It was not used though, but it works.
And you guys doing some nighttime harvesting here?
We night pick everything.
Night pick everything.
And it's a combination of I want to get cool fruit in the morning and not be waiting for it. The old school way that we used to do it was start at daylight and sometimes pick until 11 or 12, and the last loads would be coming in warm. The pickers like it because they're picking in the cool weather. It can be 50-something degrees when they're picking, and there are no yellow jackets.
Yeah. This must be post harvesting. Just a nice aesthetic shot of the vineyards with some seasonal changing of the leaves.
Yeah, I think that's 777 Pinot Noir. I think.
Your Pinot Noir, my friend.
Well, I kind of can see where the field is. So I could be guessing.
That makes sense. Well, let's get a little bit more specific and talk about location and maybe some geography and geology, as well as some topography. There's a lot of words there. So here we are in California, and it may be hard for you guys to see, but you start on the north coast, Mendocino County, Sonoma, Napa Valley. We're all familiar with what we would call north coast, all the way down to maybe Marin or so. And then starting at around Santa Cruz, Monterey, and you work down the coastline past San Luis Obispo and Paso, and then eventually you hit Santa Barbara. So you're really one of the furthest south, more equatorial portions of California, which means that you are. Do you know what parallel you're approximately at down there?
No.
But southerly nonetheless.
Can't even guess. But
Couldn't even guess.
The one thing that we is the most southern region 1 area in the northern hemisphere.
Right, and that means that you're one of the coolest, the most southern, most coolest, or the only Winkler 1 growing climate. So super, even though you are very close to the equator, you are one of the coolest growing climates, or maybe the only coolest growing climate in the northern hemisphere, considered the coolest.
Sonoma Coast might, and Mendocino could be in the running, but it's a combination of our daylight hours and the cool afternoons that makes the area very unique.
All right, let's take a look. I'm going to play this video. It might be hard for some people to see, but I really like it because it shows what happens. Shows why this jut here at Point Concepcion happens, and why California normally has pretty much a northern kind of maybe more northwesterly kind of orientation to the coastline, and then all of a sudden at Santa Barbara it takes this alarming left-hand turn and goes like almost directly east until it hits north of Los Angeles. But this weird shaped coastline is a geographic kind of anomaly for California, and that's what this guy's. Hopefully, I get it to play here. Maybe I get it to play. Let's see if I can get it to play. Maybe not. Sorry, more technical difficulties. Thanks everybody for bearing with us today. Now I can see my subtitle. Well, all right, so I'll just quickly describe what seems to have happened is that the Pacific plate kind of smacked up against the North American plate and pushed up this piece of land that eventually filled in and became that Point Concepcion inward and northward into San Francisco. So you have what basically turn out to be transverse mountain ranges, east-west, rather than north-south. And with north-south mountain ranges, what you do is you tend to block the Pacific influence, whereas where you are, the east-west transverse mountain ranges encourages kind of that Pacific influence to funnel through, and you're in that western part of funneling through.
Yes. And the other thing that we have, if you look to the right, the Mojave Desert,
Yep.
It gets very hot, and there's usually a kind of, it's heating up air, and it's, basically pulling air in, and that's one of the things that, it's basically that looks like it's pointing right at the San Ynez Valley. So that's a driver of pulling air in off the ocean.
Yeah, that heat rises and sucks the air in from the Pacific through the channel of those mountain ranges.
Yeah.
So I have here a video, and hopefully this video plays. If not, I can stop on over to, I know where it is. I'll unshare and reshare. Yeah, it looks like it's embedded in here and doesn't want to play. So what I'm going to do is pop out of here real quick and pull this out, and I will show the video separately. I know how to do this, so Bear with me one second.
But
Any
see,
more?
the other effect of the east-west mountains that are on the Pacific is that gives Santa Barbara, the town, a subtropical climate where I've had bananas growing in my yard.
Yeah. Pretty unheard of for that, huh?
Well, you can't do it everywhere, that's for
Can't
sure.
do it everywhere. So I'm going to pop in. I got David here. I'm going to add him to the stream, and let's hear what David has to say about the valley a little bit. And hopefully it shows in full screen. We'll get it up to full screen. And David, you're on.
Come on, David.
Wow. Oh, wait, hold on. I know how to fix this. Hold on. Bear with me one second. We'll get him to start over.
Hey, so here up to the north is the La Purísima Hills. That's the northern range in our San Ynez Valley. And as we pan down into the riverbed, that green belt there is Anyways River. And then up above that to the south is the Santa Rosa range. And those two mountain ranges define our valley. So the river's running right down the middle of those two ranges. Our part of our vineyard is right here in the river basin. That's where we have our Pinot Noir, Syrah, and that's an alluvial soil that has sand and gravel and many variations of strata running through it. And if you can just imagine the river winding through this area as the eons went by, and now it's clear to some extent, and it's been farmed for the last 150 years.
A cool video of kind of trying to bring you into your growing region there in the Santa Rita Hills. So let's taste the, do you have the Pinot Noir, the Santa Rita Hills appellated Pinot Noir? This guy?
Yeah, that's
So like I was saying before about the county being typically young vines, maybe not as concentrated, usually coming from more vigorous parts of the vineyard. This is going to be a little bit more dark fruited because of the vines are a little bit less vigorous and the fruit is more concentrated.
And what vintage you normally, obviously, this is, we had 18 on the county Pinot. I've got 16, which is our current release on the Santa Rita Hills. And that's explained through a little bit more barrel or just a longer holdback?
Yeah, definitely the use of oak is a little bit more present. But then again, with more concentrated fruit, you can handle more oak.
Yeah.
So it just it seems to need to develop a little bit more in the bottle.
Great perfume to it, still great acidity, so much fruit, but much more complexity, I would say. Not just fruit, but the fruit is integrated into barrel and spice, and as you said, darker fruit for me for sure too.
Right. It's we're farming 70 acres of Pinot Noir, and you're going to have a range of vigor and just expression of fruit. There are 8 clones of Pinot Noir to work with, and both of these wines are multi-clone blends that really express the Santa Rita Hills.
Yeah. I'm in any favorite food pairings on this? People out there always want to know. So it's the number one question that's
I
asked.
really like duck and mushrooms.
Yeah. That's I'm with you on that one. Let's take a look at some of this other these demonstrative images we have about what this means. So I think this is a great picture of kind of the valley on a greater scale. So the San Ynez Valley is kind of this Burgundy kind of region, and then the Santa Rita Hills being that western portion, all the way towards the tip. And as you said, a dozen or so miles from the ocean. So the most Pacific influenced and coolest of the San Ynez Valley, or even the subregions.
Right, and we can get some influence from the ocean to the south, because there are times where you'll see fog rolling over the mountains coming into the valley, and that can cool things off really quickly.
Yeah, I see. So it doesn't have to come in from the west. It can actually bump over the southern mountain range.
Yeah, the wind is from the west, but the fog can be building up in the ocean and just spill over the mountains.
You know, so here's another good shot of the subregions here. Happy Canyon being all the way furthest east, and obviously the warmest. You said 1 degree for every mile. And
well, Happy Canyon's kind of it runs north-south in the east-west San Ynez Valley, and it kind of goes up into a box canyon almost, and it has very little river wind influence. So it is the warmest part of the valley. Years ago, when we had Sauvignon Blanc in our vineyard, I was buying Sauvignon Blanc from Happy Canyon, and we would pick a Happy Canyon, and then 5 weeks later, pick the fruit out of our vineyard.
5 weeks difference.
Right. And that's maybe 20-something miles.
Wow. Amazing. Such difference. This is David actually taking a look at the fog burning off, but not really. It's taking a look at the same scene, but talking about the wind coming in. And you can actually, what I like most about this video is that you can't hear anything because of the wind at 12:30.
I told you the wind came up.
No doubt. And then we have a lovely map of Santa Barbara where you are near Buellton. You're pretty far east. Pretty far west, outside of Buellton. So you're in that western part of the ABA, which is pretty cool, literally, figuratively. We've got some factoids there for people that are kind of geeky. Michelle sent me this picture from Friday to show us kind of where you're at in terms of development. Maybe you can give us a heads up on what's happening currently in the vineyards and where you're at in terms of the viticulture we were discussing.
The fruit's been set. We've suckered. We've shoot thinned. I know the last time I was up there last week, they had the leafer set up. So once all the fruit's set, then we start doing a mechanical leafer first, and then we can follow that with a hand crew, and then we'll know what our crop load is and figure out if we need to thin anything at that point. It's not something you really can do until you've opened up the canopy.
Yeah, and do you know approximately whether you're ahead of schedule, behind schedule, or on schedule in terms of the 5-year average or so?
I think we might be a little bit behind because we had a cold winter and we had some late rain. So the vines grow on soil temperature, and until things dry out, the ground doesn't really warm up.
Yeah.
So it's really nice that we've moved out of the drought for the time being, and we're now back into a more normal kind of harvest after Labor Day, not before Labor Day. that's really ideal, because then the nighttime temperature starts to drop, the days get a little bit shorter, and it really slows the vines down so that you're not having to reactively pick, but you can pick when things get ripe.
Yeah, the longer hang time, maybe the better. And then obviously you want a nice, calm, controlled harvest under your terms rather than Mother Nature dictating that now.
Yeah, pick everything. We haven't had that for the last couple of years.
All right, we've got some fact sheets up here. This is David explaining where he's doing some tucking here. So it looks like a machine might have gone through there, because the vegetation looks pulled back a little bit.
I think that's a low vigor part of the Pinot Noir.
Okay.
The Syrah tends to be a more vigorous vine, and that's definitely not the Syrah.
Okay, and then for the Chardonnay, you guys, I mean, it's amazing the amount of work, effort, and complexity there is on seemingly something that for me seems, when you look at the label, it says Santa Barbara County Chardonnay, which means, hey, we can source grapes from anywhere. But you're very specific. You've got some long-term contract, and you've got here on the 2018, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different vineyard sources, and even throw in a little bit of Lafon Vineyard Riesling.
Well, it was there. I like what it does for the aromatics.
Yeah, a little more complexity on the aromatics.
It brings up the fruit without really going, oh, there's Riesling in there.
Yeah, understood. The County Pinot Noir, 2 different vineyard sites on this guy. A lot of the Burning Creek vineyard site, and then some Lafond in there.
Yeah, the Burning Creek site is the youngest vineyard, so it has tended to be the backbone for the county Pinot Noir.
And how many acres do you guys have under vine control yourself? And maybe how many acres equivalent would you say you're purchasing from your long-term contracts?
I can say that we have around 145 acres that we farm directly. As far as how many acres I buy from, I can tell you, I can look up what the tonnage is, but I don't have a figure.
Yeah, that's okay. We're just getting an idea. Here's another great shot of the Santa Rita Hills AVA. You can see Lafon Vineyard, I think, down here in towards the bottom left somewhere on this map. And then the Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir is mostly Lafon with some Burning Creek in there. And of course, we're available for inquiries. And we want people to visit you guys in the tasting room, which is open and happy to receive visitors. I wanted to. There's a question here, and I think it's a good question for Pierre. Lucy, our friend from Austin, says, "Who's the artist that makes your labels?" Pierre, I know Pierre can talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you're talking about the Chardonnay label?
Yeah, I think, the watercolored theme on the Santa Barbara County Pinot, and then I think the Chardonnay's been the same label since 1985 or so.
Yes,
at least. Yeah. Well, I think the artist was Mark Shields who did the labels, but that's a long time ago. Now we're not using colorful labels anymore. We're using more black and white or mostly black labels.
Well, the ones we have today, every single one is more of the.
That is. Do you think it's Mark Shields? I don't remember. No, that's not Mark Shields. I don't know. I can't remember who did those.
But that's definitely a Pierre touch on those watercolors, right?
Well, what do you mean by a Pierre touch? But whatever you mean, I think you're right.
Well, you're getting compliments, Pierre. I'm throwing compliments, free compliments your way.
I'm an architect by profession, so design is very important to me, and that's why we pay a lot of attention to the labels. So the labels do vary, but they're all we try to get a design that expresses the wine and is also saleable.
Yeah, I think, I love the Chardonnay label because it gives me an excuse to talk about something, which is it's a bird of paradise.
Yeah.
And birds of paradise are kind of tropical fruits like Bruce growing bananas in his yard. They don't grow where you guys normally are, but they do happen to grow where you are because of the unique terroir, right?
Correct.
So it's cool for me to talk about kind of the tropical, how close you are to the equator, yet you're still in a Winkler Zone 1 or a very cool growing climate, growing what I consider riper style Chardonnay, but it's with long hang times and great acidity. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Cool climate, long hang times, proper development. So you can taste something in Pinot Noir land that's 14+%, but doesn't taste like strawberry jam for me.
We couldn't say it better.
Well, we don't have time.
You really said it well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to sell the wines. It's great to have two legends of Santa Barbara and maybe just California winemaking join us here. Is there anything that we might have missed that you'd like to touch upon before we depart our live stream video?
Oh, I had the thought that the climate from Santa Barbara on the ocean, which is subtropical, means that you can't grow apples here, or good apples. The San Ynez Valley, especially in the Santa Rita Hills, the apples are awesome.
Yeah, they grow a lot of apple orchards.
Yeah.
But everyone planted grapes.
People are always looking for, well, it's an interesting background to watch. I believe, was it UC Davis that came down there and were some of the people that said, yes, this is a good place for Pinot Noir. And you guys already knew this, I think. But you had a bunch of university guys telling you that this is a good climate and region to grow Pinot Noir after you already
was the initial assessments of the Santa Maria Valley.
Yeah.
In the Santa Maria Valley, there tends to be large plantings, and that was where some of the oldest Pinot Noir vines were. I think there was speculation maybe on sparkling wine, but surprisingly enough, there's very little sparkling wines developed here, just here and there, small quantities.
Yeah, well, you only had 200 cases of that sparkling Pinot Noir you teased us with, so.
Well, where there's demand, we'll try to fill it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to come out and visit you guys out there and see what you've got hidden behind the tasting room wall back there, because there's always something good and fun that you guys are working with. So I wanted to thank you, both of you, for your time today, for making great wine, and I can't wait for the ability to actually taste with you guys again and come and hang out and see you guys in Santa Barbara and have you come visit us in Chicago here. And get back to a little bit more of our normal wine tasting routines.
Well, thank you, Lee.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was our pleasure. So you guys are on our national calendar. We're kind of winding it down. We decided that we would do this on an ad hoc basis, but we have a few more coming up. We've got one on this weekend, back to Germany. We'll taste some German wines, and then we'll taste some wines from Italy next Wednesday. So Pierre and Bruce, if you guys are super bored and want to take some wines with us, we'd love to see you back here. In the meantime, everybody make sure that you raise a glass of Santa Barbara Pinot Noir. Make sure it's Santa Barbara Winery. And everybody stay safe. And thanks again, guys.
And
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.